Have you ever felt like you wish you just had a better handle on your own mind? To really get why you react the way you do sometimes, or just feel a bit more in control. Life feels so complex, right? Like you're always trying to figure yourself out. Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're definitely not just scratching the surface. We want to give you like a real toolkit. Our mission is to unpack some fantastic insights from Nick Trenton's book, The Art of Self-Therapy. We want to turn them into stuff you can actually use, maybe starting today. Think of this as your guide to becoming your own best therapist, really taking the reins. We'll look at understanding yourself better, how your past plays a role, mastering thoughts, and, building the life you want. Okay, so let's get into this journey towards self mastery. This isn't just theory, right? It's about practical steps. And I guess the starting point has to be building a solid foundation.
Absolutely, yeah. Trenton is really clear on this. The absolute bedrock is self-awareness.
Yeah.
And it's not just, thinking about your feelings. It's more like actively observing them,
Yeah.
your thoughts, emotions, even physical sensations. And crucially, doing it without jumping straight to judgment. The book mentions switching on your inner noticer.
Okay, but that sounds potentially hard. If your mind's racing, you feel overwhelmed, how do you just switch on this inner noticer without getting sucked in?
That's a really good point. And it is a common hurdle. The key, and Trenton highlights this using ideas like Dr. Tom Stevens' process,
Yeah.
is to start incredibly small.
Yeah.
And with absolutely zero agenda to fix anything right away. It's less about what you notice initially and much more about how you're noticing it, like
Yeah.
a curious scientist. So think about Emma in the book. She'd just sit quietly, maybe eyes closed, and just notice. Anxious thoughts might drift by. She'd feel a tightness in her chest, hear the traffic outside. And she'd just sort of mentally label them. There's a thought about my to-do list. Or, noticing tension here. The key is, she wasn't trying to change any of it in that moment.
And that, without trying to change a bit, that feels really important. It sounds so simple, but I imagine it creates some distance.
Exactly, a crucial psychological distance. So instead of being the anxiety or being the tension, Emma could see it as something happening within her, separate from her core self.
Right, observing it, not embodying it.
Precisely. And that distance, that's where the understanding starts. That's where you can begin making informed choices. After just a little while of doing this, Emma found mornings weren't overwhelming anymore. They just felt known.
Known. I like that. Okay, so building on that notice the next idea sounds a bit heavier. Embracing the shadow. This is Carl Jung's concept, right? The parts of us we don't like, the stuff we push down.
That's the one. The unconscious bits we deem unacceptable, maybe anger, jealousy, insecurity. But as you said, pushing them away doesn't make them disappear. They still influence us.
Like a secret puppeteer you mentioned before we started. That really stuck with me.
Yeah, it's a good analogy. They can pull the strings, often showing up when we least expect it or want it.
So why is denying these parts so bad for us? And how does looking at them, even the uncomfortable stuff, actually make us stronger or more whole?
Well, denying them is detrimental because that energy doesn't just go away, it manifests.
Yeah.
Often it pops up as like really strong emotional reactions to things other people do, or maybe harsh judgments we make about others.
Projection.
Exactly. When we deny these aspects, we're basically living in a state of internal conflict. We're using up energy just trying to keep these parts hidden. Trenton really pushes for an honest but non-judgmental exploration. It's not about shaming yourself. It's about integration, wholeness.
Okay, so bringing the hidden bits into the light, not necessarily to fix them, but just to understand their role. I'm thinking of Sarah's story from the book. She overreacted to a coworker, right?
Yes, she lashed out over something pretty minor, and even she knew it was an overreaction. But instead of just beating herself up, she paused. She asked herself, okay, wait, what am I really reacting to here? What's this feeling connected to?
That pause seems critical.
It is. For Sarah, she realized it tapped into feeling dismissed as a kid. And the really powerful part was her response after that realization. Instead of more self-criticism, she was able to gently acknowledge that hurt, younger part of herself. She could sort of offer it what it needed back then, maybe just validation or comfort.
That's self-compassion in action.
Absolutely. And that's how we move towards wholeness, by accepting all the pieces, not just the shiny ones.
Yeah, that's incredibly helpful. And, as we start seeing these inner workings, we naturally start seeing patterns in how we relate to others, which brings us neatly to attachment styles. Many listeners might have heard of these. Can you give us a quick refresher on the main styles and then maybe talk about how Trenton suggests we actually work with our style?
Sure. So attachment theory basically says our earliest relationships, usually with caregivers, create these blueprints or patterns for how we connect in adult relationships. The main styles usually discussed are secure, comfortable with closeness and independence. Then anxious ambivalent, often craving closeness, but worried about abandonment. Avoidant dismissive tends to value independence highly, may be uncomfortable with too much closeness. And finally, disorganized, which can be more chaotic or inconsistent patterns, often stemming from frightening early experiences.
Okay.
But the key takeaway from Trenton isn't just sticking a label on yourself. It's realizing these patterns aren't like a life sentence.
Right. It's a starting point, not a destiny. The book mentions things like boosting emotional intelligence, mindful communication, even finding secure role models.
Yes, all practical strategies. Think about Mark's story. He saw his anxious clinging in relationships wasn't just him, it was rooted in childhood fears.
And knowing that changed things.
It gave him a place to start. Once he had that awareness, he could consciously practice different responses, like patience, self-soothing techniques. It's about breaking free from just reacting on autopilot based on old patterns.
Moving from reaction to conscious response. I like that framing.
Exactly. So you can build healthier, more intentional connections instead of just, playing out the same old script again and again.
And speaking of old scripts and those childhood feelings, that leads perfectly into reparenting the inner child, this idea that we carry this younger version of ourselves with maybe unmet needs or unresolved emotions. What does reparenting actually look like in practice? How can you genuinely meet those needs now as an adult?
Reparenting, in essence, is about becoming the compassionate, attentive caregiver to that younger part of yourself that maybe didn't get everything it needed back then. Practically, this can involve things like visualizing your younger self, maybe talking to them in your imagination or through journaling.
Mm.
It involves connecting the dots, seeing how past experiences might be influencing present feelings or reactions, and then, crucially, actively giving yourself what was missing. Maybe that's a sense of safety or validation, permission to play, or just comfort.
I remember Sophie's story, the woman who loved drawing as a kid but stopped. When she started again, she imagined telling her younger self something like, "It's okay to create. What you make is valuable."
Yes. And that simple act of validating her inner child's need for expression actually helped her rediscover joy she'd lost. It's powerful proof that nurturing these younger parts can heal old wounds and really boost your sense of self-worth now. It's realizing you have the power today to provide what might have been lacking back then.
Okay, so our past shapes us, but it's often the stories we tell ourselves about the past that have the real grip. This feels connected to the next big area, challenging, limiting core beliefs. These deep down assumptions we have about ourselves, others, the world, they run the show sometimes, don't they?
They really can. They're like these automatic filters that color everything, our thoughts, feelings, actions. And the book stresses, these are beliefs, not facts. They're just ideas we've practiced thinking, often unconsciously.
So how do we even find them? And then what's Trenton's process for actually changing them?
Finding them can take some digging. Trenton mentions techniques like the downward arrow method. You take a negative thought, like, I messed up that presentation, and keep asking, what does that mean about me?
Yeah.
Or, if that's true, what's bad about it?
Drilling down.
Exactly. Until you hit that core belief, like,
Yeah.
I'm incompetent or I'm unlovable. Once you've identified it, the change process involves acting like a detective. You examine the evidence. What really supports this belief? What contradicts it? Where did it even come from? Then you work on developing a more balanced, realistic, and frankly kinder alternative belief.
Like Emma again, right? She found that I'm not good enough belief.
Yes. And she didn't just accept it, she questioned it. Is this always true? What are the exceptions? She reframed it to something like, I'm learning and growing every day.
And that shift wasn't just intellectual.
No. The book says she felt a real difference in her confidence. It shows you have to not just challenge the old belief, but actively practice and reinforce the new, healthier one. You're literally rewiring those mental pathways.
Okay, that makes sense. But sometimes, maybe it's not about changing the thought itself, but changing how we relate to it. Which brings us to cognitive diffusion from ACT acceptance and commitment therapy. How does just adding a phrase like, I'm noticing I'm having the thought, that makes such a difference? It seems almost too simple.
It does seem simple, but it creates a profound shift in perspective. Instead of being fused with your thoughts, like totally caught up in believing every single one, diffusion helps you step back, you start seeing thoughts as just thoughts, passing mental events like clouds in the sky or leaves on a stream as the metaphors go.
Okay.
That little phrase, I'm noticing I'm having the thought, that automatically creates space. Psychological distance. You recognize, oh, that's just my mind doing its thing, rather than this thought is absolute reality and I must obey it.
So Sarah, feeling anxious, thinks I'm going to fail. Instead of spiraling, she could say.
I'm noticing I'm having the thought that I'm going to fail. Exactly. Just naming it like that takes away so much of its immediate punch. The thought might still be there, but its grip loosens.
Yeah.
You gain flexibility. You stay more present. It lets you choose your actions based on your values, not just react to whatever thought pops up. It
Yeah.
really makes you ask, like you said, what if the problem isn't the thought, but my relationship to it? Diffusion gives you a way to change that relationship.
Wow. Okay. So we've covered a lot. The foundation of awareness, dealing with the past, mastering the mind. But insights need action to really matter, right? So now it's about application, building the life you want. And Trenton talks about behavioral activation, this idea of scheduling positive, meaningful activities, especially when you feel low or stuck. It sounds a bit backward. Acting before you feel motivated.
It does sound counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But that's exactly why it works so well, especially for things like depression or just feeling stuck. We often wait for motivation to hit us before we do something.
Hmm.
Behavioral activation flips that. It operates on the principle that motivation often follows action. It doesn't always come first. So the process involves looking at what you currently do and how it affects your mood. Then thinking about your values, what's truly important to you. You create a list, an activity menu of things, even small things, aligned with those values. Then you schedule them and you do them, even if you really, really don't feel like it.
That sounds like the hard part, forcing yourself. I remember Maria's story. Low mood for weeks, but she committed to just a short morning walk with music.
Right. And she did it consistently, even on days she had zero desire. And slowly, by consistently taking that small value-driven action, things started to shift. Her energy picked up. And eventually she even started writing again, something she loved but had completely stopped doing.
So it proves that deliberately adding positive actions, even tiny ones, can kind of jumpstart your mood.
Precisely. It builds momentum. The key is starting small, being kind to yourself if you miss a day, and just focusing on the action itself, not waiting for the feeling.
Okay, that's a really practical tool. Wow, we've covered an incredible amount of ground here, pulling from the art of self-therapy. It really feels like a comprehensive toolkit for becoming, well, the architect of your own emotional life.
It really does. We went from that foundational self-awareness and integrating the shadow parts to understanding attachment, reparenting the inner child, challenging those core beliefs,
Mm.
and learning to step back from thoughts with diffusion, finally landing on proactive steps like behavioral activation.
It feels like the core message is empowerment, that you, the listener, have these tools. You can guide your own healing. You can be mindful, curious, definitely compassionate with yourself, and active in shaping how you experience the world.
Absolutely. It's about moving from feeling like you're just subject to your emotions and history to realizing you have agency.
So, maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Imagine the kind of freedom that opens up when you truly realize your inner world isn't this fixed, unchangeable thing, that it's more like a landscape or maybe a garden, that you have the power to explore, to cultivate, to transform continuously. What's just one small, deliberate thing you could do today? One small step you could take to start tending to that inner garden in a new way?